in the battle between Norton and Nigel Hughes to become the presidential candidate. We've seen the music war started, so they both got some AI-generated music and talking about their great virtues as leaders. And they're really very funny. Also, in the lyrics, though, that they posted to generate the AI music, they have some very racist undertones to the music. But that is not untypical of the PNC or the AFC. They had to put in the music the dog whistle. So I've listened with interest. I'm sure most people have not even heard the music, but it's to bolster credentials. Who is the greater of the two leaders? Both mediocre in their own sense, but who should lead APNU, the coalition? Then we heard about the bingo war. So Nigel Hughes went to BV and did some bingo, and then I saw Norton doing his own bingo at Congress Place soon. So we've seen the rollout of the bingo war between the two contesting parties. And then I saw the flyer war. So the latter one caught my attention because, as we've been saying, that there's nothing that you can believe from these two political parties. That they're both going to make a series of promises to the electorate that they have no intention of fulfilling. And so we saw the flyers that have been placed on their pages now, and they've been circulating across the country. So, as usual, here they are. So if you didn't see them before, these are the flyers that have been circulated. So as usual, they make lots of promises. You're going to get a lot of stuff from the PNC should they win the next elections. Cash grants every day of the year. Free money. In fact, this is the title of it. A promise, a PNC or APNU government will guarantee every household a livable income. What do we mean by a household livable income? That is money. Now, that's the question. The definition of it is that is the money and benefits you and your family need every month to live comfortably, free from financial woes and worries. So that's how they defined it. You remember the good life for everyone? I think a lot of the reporters here are pretty young, and they may not remember the 2015 slogan, a good life for everyone. Well, it's as vague as the good life for everyone. So you will get enough money to live comfortably, free of any financial woes and worries. That is APNU's promise to you. They promise freeness everywhere. You don't have to. You get subsidized food, subsidized rent, 100,000 per year, per month for the pensioners, up from 41,000 that we have now. Although they could not, in the 5 years that they were there, fulfill the promise that they made to double old age pension. They made that in 2015. They couldn't even double old age pension now, but they're promising to go to 100,000. So who would believe them? Nobody. And they have an uncanny ability to make promises. So they tell you a lot about expenditure, how much they will spend. but they will never tell you about how they'll never craft a plan as to how to earn money as a country. Everyone knows, where this is logical, that if you have to spend money, you have to earn money. And if you listen or you follow anything that has come out of the mouths of the opposition parties, they only speak about how to spend money. This is what they will do. This is how much money they will give. They never, in a single day, talk about how the country will earn more, about the diversification of the economy, the generation of creating the incentives for investments that will expand job opportunities. None of that figures in their promises. It's just about, oh, we will spend everything. And that philosophy is precisely what got us in the situation in the 90s and when we became the poorest country in the world. Well, not the world, but in the hemisphere, below Haiti. And it is living above your means for a long period. We became heavily indebted. We didn't earn much as a country. We're just borrowing to sustain livelihood and bail to the point, like last week I spoke of this, that we were declared uncreditworthy to borrow. In the 90s, nobody wanted to even lend us money because of our inability to repay debts, because the debt took up over 100% of revenue. So this is the same philosophy. They can't get away from it. And it is not a criticism of the PNC or the AFC because we don't like them. It's just that they have never gotten it right. Philosophically, particularly on the economic side. Particularly on the economic side. They are incapable of crafting a plan. So when my colleague sent me this morning, and some of our activists, and said, oh, this is what they're circulating, this is their plan, I said to them, there is no plan. These are just a list of promises. To have a plan means that, first of all, you have to conceptualize where you want the country to go, so you have to have a vision. You have to then do the technical work to see what policies and programs and projects you need to support that vision. You then have to see what is sustainable in the long run, what is affordable, and then you can seek to make economic or social promises to people on wages and other things. So the promises, you don't start off with that. You plan first, like in any home. They make a list of promises, and then they call them plans for the future of the country. They have had a hard time. So listen to what Nigel Hughes wants to do in Georgetown. So this is their plan for the country. He wants to create a bank for women in business in Georgetown, for Georgetown, only people in Georgetown. Obviously, they're trying to fool the voters in Georgetown again. But he wants to build all the roads in Georgetown, claiming we spend too much money on infrastructure, but he wants to build every road in Georgetown and said he will do it in a manner that's not discriminatory. So we are discriminating in building roads in Georgetown. I thought most of Georgetown supported the PNC, so all the roads we're building in Georgetown would be in the PNC stronghold, or AFC, well, historically PNC. But it's nonsense. He wants to restore the cemeteries in Georgetown. So a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about precisely this, about the plan to restore the cemeteries and everything like of that sort, of that nature. Modernize Georgetown. It's all vague. So anyone who pays any serious attention to these promises again would need, I don't want to say disparagingly, but would really need to have themselves examined. Because it can't be that you would allow yourselves to be duped so often. These guys, at a press conference, you go to the press conferences, you're reporters, and you ask them questions and they can't explain a single policy. Nigel Hughes, at his press conference, said, we must all get together and create the plan for the country. We have a plan already. He wants that, but then he goes ahead and makes these promises. So they can't explain anything to anyone, but they just put this down on paper and circulate it in the communities. And as I said before, they're outrageous things. Not only would what they promise here be more money than we're collecting as a country, but will bankrupt us in a short period of time. So I would urge the people of the country not to pay too much attention to this matter here, to what they've been saying. Now, I see the focus here, the last week again, that they've sought to focus on youth again. Now, by having a youth forum at Congress Place. And so they brought people from around the country, and they had maybe 200 persons at the youth forum. And then I looked at, if you contrast that with what the People's Progressive Party did, we had several youth fora across the country. We went to Regions 1, 8, 9, Region 4, East Bank, East Coast. We went to almost all the coastal regions. We're yet to complete Region 10 and 7. But if you look at the 15,000 people who joined the party, you will see one thing, that they're Amerindian kids, they're Afro-Guyanese kids, they're Indo-Guyanese kids, they are young people, some of them are older, and people of mixed origin, every race in the country. You just look at the images from the broad-based fora that we had, 15,000 people. It's held across in their own communities in the region. That's our approach to inclusion. You can't bring 200 people of a single race in Georgetown and call it a national youth forum. It cannot be. But that is their entire approach to addressing youth issues. And even the young people, and look at the track record of the People's National Congress, AFC, APNU, in relation to young people. Now, 2015, the youth vote took the PNC over the top. The young people were in the forefront of the struggle, carrying the message of APNU AFC. They were told that young people will have a prominent role in the new government, that they will find thousands of jobs. I have here their manifesto, the PNC's manifesto in 2015. The manifesto mentioned youth 24 times in their manifesto. 24 times they mentioned youth. They had a whole policy on young people. Several pages about what they will do for young people. More jobs, interministerial task force to develop programs for them, vocational studies, special youth fund to be created, etc. I don't want to bore you with what they wrote in 2015, but it was every positive idea you could think about, they put under the heading of young people. And this just demonstrates that they can put anything on paper. The reality is that when they got into office, young people were totally excluded from the government. It became a geriatric government. The people who carried the Kool-Aid, they were given the Kool-Aid, the young people, and they believed it was really nectar. But it was Kool-Aid. I hope you understand the Kool-Aid reference, because a lot of young people may not. The Jonestown Kool-Aid, where everybody died, drinking the Kool-Aid, right? So the thing is, the young people fetched the Kool-Aid to others and believing it was nectar, and then they became disappointed. I remember the Dalrymple family, Nikki from the Dalrymple family told me that now, after the elections, all the young people from Georgetown, who they had mobilized, are coming to her now to explain what's going on. They couldn't find a job. They couldn't, and the Dalrymple family had been with APNU, PNC, their whole lives. They were in the protests, they're on the forefront of the struggle, the entire family. And after 2015, nobody wanted to talk to them. They were seeking messages. They were trying to get a response from some of these ministers about these young people who were promised jobs, etc. None of them got anything. They got no help from the government. And I've asked James Bond, because he's here today, he knows very well what took place, and maybe he should do a program to give you the details, the struggle of young people in the PNC in those 5 years, in APNU AFC government, to gain recognition or just for a basic job. They had to struggle. And these were the leaders, the young leaders, much less ordinary young people. So whatever they come up with now again, they could write 400 chapters on young people in their manifesto. They can write 400 chapters on young people. They are not programmed that way to give to support to young people. Contrast that with the People's Progressive Party. Look at the leadership of our party. The Central Committee, the Executive Committee of the party, the Cabinet. You would see historically, we've always had young people right up at the top in policy-making position, serious policy-making in position. The president himself is a young man. We have had ministers, most of us, Irfan Ali, a number of other ministers, became ministers in their 20s. And so this is, to have a youth forum of that nature doesn't mean that they care about young people. I wonder if anyone stood up at that conference and said to Norton and the whole leadership of the APNU, what happened in 2015? Well, what about the promises that you made to young people? Who is going to take that message now? Who is going to take the message? And do you think anyone should really believe you when you talk about young people. So if you have an opportunity to, you would see all the lies that they told young people in their manifesto. Like everything else, their manifesto, they never ever kept the promises that they made to the people in 2015. So what about jobs for young people? Not just the James Bond or the others who were campaigning with them, the young people. What about ordinary people? How many jobs did they generate? When Granger was asked by a reporter, what about jobs? He said, that's not the government's responsibility. He is on tape saying that. That is not the government's responsibility. Then he went on to say, you can do pepper sauce, you can make pepper sauce. And you remember the quotation. The quotation, we don't want our young people doing, although pepper sauce might be good business, and if you can do good pepper sauce, make the pepper sauce and sell it. But we want our people to operate at the highest levels. That's not our aspiration for young people to do pepper sauce and fry breadfruit chip. Plantain chip, right? Yes, not breadfruit. Because I like breadfruit. I never criticize Granger on breadfruit policy. So that is, and that's on record, you know. That's on record. He said, that's not the government's responsibility for job creation. We said we're going to work at creating more jobs. Look how many more people are working now. 60,000 people since we got into office. A lot of the 15,000 people who have a part-time job, and many are studying now, they are mainly young people. Mainly young people. We couldn't find a full-time job for them in their communities because many of them don't live in Region 4, and where more jobs are here, Region 4, Region 3. So that's why we undertook, because of a dedicated effort. We didn't say to them, oh, it's not the government's responsibility. We said, let's see how we work with you. That's the difference in approach. And so they never created jobs for young people. The middle-aged people lost their jobs. A lot of young people suffered because of this. Just imagine if you send home 7,000 sugar workers and there are 4 members of the family and maybe 2 kids or on average, it affected their schooling. A lot of people dropped out of school because of that happening. The 2,000 Amerindians who were sent home, they lost income. Sarah Brown, who is the party's youth secretary, she outlined in her budget speech how it affected her community. A lot of these young kids who were earning a small sum of money, 2,000 of them, were callously sent home by APNU, and it affected them personally. But more importantly, it took away $700 million of income per year from the 240-something Amerindian villages across the country. And you know how hard it is in the regions 1, 7, 8, and 9 to find employment in those regions. But they never cared. They never cared. They spoke in the very same youth policy about supporting our children, and then took away the $1.6 billion of the Because We Care grant from them. But in this document that they call their manifesto in 2015, they have about supporting our children. So clearly, the point I'm making here is that people could put any nonsense on a piece of paper and share it around. They can make any promise in the world. First of all, these are not plans that they're putting forward. These are more, it's more political slogans to fool the electorate. They have no plan whatsoever. As I outlined, a plan has to be more considered and well thought out, and must show a source of generation of wealth apart from just expenditure of revenue. And so clearly the electorate will see this more and more as we get to the elections, but the believability would be an important factor. We're saying this campaign in this year will be all about who could be believed, which political party has the credibility to deliver on what they promise based on past experience. If you look at our manifestos historically and the one we came out with in 2020, in the first 3 years we had completed, even with COVID, 90% of our promises. And now, this year, we have managed to complete every promise that we made. We listed, we have done free university education, as we said. The pensioners got their doubling of old age pension in the 5 years. The children got their $50,000 that we promised in the 5 years. That's per year. So a lot of almost the joint services got back their bonus. That was very early. They got it back. We have increased the public servants. We didn't make a huge hullabaloo about big increases, percentage increases to public service. We promised to improve the conditions of service. Public sector now, if you take the 2020 budget, and you should do this as a homework because APNU will never do that. Take the 2020 budget and look at the 2025 budget. And you look at total public sector wages, and it has grown by $105 billion more per year. $105 billion more the public sector is earning per year under this government. That's $500 million US more per year, our public sector workers, without all the big fanfare. Like APNU is promising 35%. They put the 35% in the flyer. And when we ask them, is it 35% over per year or 35% over the 5 years term? They're yet to answer, because if it's 35% per year, if you compound it, it will be over 200%. So that would be, and the wages and salaries now are significant, right? So that would be like all the oil money in the budget. Like all the oil money in the budget that we have this year in this year's budget. If you increase wages and salaries by 200% in the public sector, because of the size of the wage bill, it would be all the oil money gone. But they never answer that. But they put it back in the flyer that they're circulating. Let me make sure here. Yes. Government salary increase up to 35%. Oh, they put now up to 35%. They had 35% definitively. Now it's up to 35%. And they're promising, I see the difference. Anyhow, let me don't go after this. There was too much of my time going into the details of it, because I'm dealing with the macro issues here. You can see how ridiculous something of this nature is. And so coming back to the point, which party you believe, if we put something in writing, and we're going to be making our promises too. We're not going to be making wild promises, what we will do in the next 5 years. But you can rest assured that once it's written and launched as a manifesto, that the entire government will work at fulfilling it. and as based on our track record. Whatever we put there would be done. And we made it clear already some of the basic things, that we want every Guyanese to own a home. Every Guyanese to own a home, not to live in rented properties like they want to give you rental support. We want to work to ensure that every Guyanese owns a home, that every Guyanese can have a first world health care for free. That is what we've been working at. And we're putting in place the infrastructure to make that happen. With these 12 hospitals, the rehabilitation of others, I told you already the more and more complex operations that are done at Georgetown Hospital. And so we're working towards that. We want a first world access to education, in fact, better than first world, because if you were in the United States of America, you'd have to pay for university education. Here, we want to make sure that it's all free, but it's high quality education. The focus has to be on quality now. We make it, and for all of our people, regardless of their age, they must always have an opportunity to go in and be trained or retrained for new jobs, etc. We want to work to expand the economy into areas outside of the oil and gas sector for the sole reason that we can't put all of our eggs in a single basket, because if oil prices tank, we'd be in big trouble. And you've seen what the effort, the non-oil sector has grown significantly since we got into office. And last year, it grew by over 10%. This year, too, it will grow by a similar magnitude. It represents the expansion of the non-oil and gas industry. So we have already outlined, these are some of the things we want to do. We want to have a first world type of security for people in their homes. That is why we're investing so much in technology, these predictive softwares, the cameras, facial recognition cameras, so that our crime fighting capability would improve. We want to make sure that people have access to the banking system and that the cost of financing comes down. We want to, and through reform, like digital banking, a whole range of new measures, instruments, we'd improve access. We've made it clear we want to underwrite as a government future investment opportunities for every Guyanese, whether you're big or small, so that you have options. If you have $10,000 of savings, or $100,000, or $5 million of savings, that you have investment opportunities that would yield you a bigger return than the deposit rate at the banking sector. So, and a guaranteed return by taking government opportunities that are lucrative and underwriting them, putting them in a fashion like through bonds or shares, so Guyanese can invest in these. We have outlined all of these. Those are the things that we want to focus on in the new term. We want to make sure our children are protected. Children, very important for us. If you look at a lot of our policies, we may not shout at the top of our voices, but underlying a lot of the stuff that we do is to ensure safer environment for our children and families. That is why we reoriented the tax system to make it more friendly to families, so that people can get credits and all of that for kids and support for their children. And it's not just support for their children, but also we have reoriented the tax system. We started that in this year's budget to ensure that people who put in more effort, who work harder, they can keep more money and pay less taxes. can't eliminate all the taxes totally, like some people said. So if you eliminate all taxes, and 1 year you don't get oil revenue because the prices tank, what are we going to do? You can't pay wages and salaries, you can't do anything in the country. Some of them have been advocating that. And so look at, and consistent with that, this year's budget. You have a second job, I know people are working second jobs now. And it's to our credit that people can find second jobs. They couldn't even find a first job on the afternoon. Couldn't find a job. Some people are doing two bits, and I see them, they're doing like they come home, they go back out, they work from home and the second job, maybe doing something else, PR or some online stuff, and they should keep more of their income. We did it for overtime too, the allowance for overtime. So if you're working and getting over longer hours, you should keep more money. There is a thinking, a philosophy behind everything we do. And so our policies support the vision. We want people to keep more money. If they work harder, they must keep more of that money for themselves and less should go to taxes. We support families. We support education and health. That's why the budget for education grew from 53 billion to 185 billion in 5 years. Can you imagine this? I don't think this has happened anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. That's our priority. So all of these things are consistent. And they just will come and say, oh, we'll give you X money. Oh, we'll give you like a livable wage now. Livable wage, I don't know what that means. How much, if you were, would that involve, and you have to live a comfortable life. So if you take a beer, what about, you got to include a beer in your livable wage too, because they promise a comfortable life. If you're a heavy drinker, then they have to pay you to take a drink too. And especially if you're drinking, they can't lower the standard if you're drinking fancy wine versus like well, I shouldn't say bush rum because that's illegal, but you're drinking like, I don't know, what's the low, white rum. Yes, so if you're drinking white rum, so they have to calculate the livable wage for different people because they said comfortably and with leisure and no worries. I would be worried if I'm drinking wine and you gave me money only for white rum. So I'd have worry and financial woes. This is the nonsense that they come up with. Livable wage, good life, all kinds of slogans. People-centered development, that's not a new thing now. People-centered development. You got people-centered development. They had it in the period they were there. It's just who they defined as the people. It's themselves. They had it. So the ministers got the 50% increase when the public servants in that year got 6%. The ministers, on average, the ministers got 50% increase in wages and salaries weeks after we come in. They got all of the medical care for themselves and their families in Ireland, that they took for themselves. They bought a fleet of fancy vehicles, a whole range. They changed the per diem policy. They make it a final charge. You didn't have to account for the money, a final charge on the consolidated fund, and increase it. So whether they traveled or not, and they collected a per diem to travel, they didn't have to clear the advance. So they pocketed the money. I don't even want to go back to the past because I can give you a long list of transgressions that we put sometimes as a bad memory. You want to forget it, like Apnu was the 5 years. Bad memory. But we need to talk a bit more about these things because they're coming back to it. They had a people-centered development, but it was for the geriatrics, not for young people, and for the ministers and their families. Remember the scholarships? Only the ministers and their families. Simona Brooms, $50-odd million went to scholarship for her kids. But they were not Guyana scholars. You know, they didn't go through a competitive process to get that. We decided, hold on. And they say friends and family. Now that's a new slogan. Everything is friends and family. So the friends and family was the center for them. I agree with the friends and family. People do a lot for friends. PPP does a lot for friends and family. But the country are friends and family. The contractors, there are 3,000, nearly 4,000 new contractors now who couldn't get a job on the APNU. Almost maybe half of them are young Afro-Guyanese. You see it everywhere. They would have not even helped young Afro-Guyanese, although they claim that is what they want to do. Wouldn't have done that. The 40,000 people who got their homes or their house lots now are friends and family too. The gold scholarship, the people, there were 28,000. These are our friends and family. And I've asked the Ministry of Education that there must be to ensure that all the students who have had the issue with their recent problem that they've had, that they be contacted. They told me that by now 900 of the 1,400 have been contacted, and they've accepted or they're offered programs and other courses, and they'll keep their credit at other institutions. They have to contact the other 500. Professor Opede is in charge. He is in spite of the efforts to disparage him, I strongly believe in his capability. He came from strong academic credentials, and I want to assure the students that the government will work with them to ensure that they don't suffer any negative consequences of this mishap here. But coming back to that, to friends and family, we have trained another 20-something thousand people through TechVoc training. Those are our friends and family. Not Cathy Hughes, who was taking contracts in our own ministry. You know, and Nigel Hughes could go on a platform and say, PPP does things for friends and family. Imagine this guy shamelessly saying that, and then said, when asked, I don't see anything wrong with a minister who is my wife getting a contract for her own company in her ministry, signed off by her. I don't see anything wrong with that. But the PPP is the Friends and Family Party. The PPP is Friends and Family Party. The nonsense you hear about it. This is the shamelessness of the people like the AFC and APNU. So I had transitioned to the youth activity. They have no intention of helping young people. If you have a young person who wants to progress in life, just look at our vision. We're working for all of Ghana. This country can't be run for one group of people. This country is too connected. Our history is a rich one, and we are better and we are stronger because of our makeup, the ethnic makeup of this country. The people have sought to exploit this. Historically, we fought a big battle because they defined the PPP as a racist party. And we have had to fight a battle to show that through our policy making, an entire history of our party, that we fought against racism and to bring our people together. So young people who were captured by that vision, there's only one multi-ethnic political party now in the country, and that's the PPP. And it's clearly, you don't need more evidence, the evidence is visible. The evidence is visible. So clearly, they're operating on an outdated notion, an outdated concept, and a failed philosophy of dividing our people. It's not going to work in the future. Secondly, young people have to see themselves in a vision. And so with the PPP, you would see better paying jobs. Over time, you get access to training and healthcare, raise your families, keep more of your income. You get your own home, have more leisure, live in security. These are all things we've been working on. And then you're recognized. It becomes easier for you as a Guyanese. Like, that's what we're approaching now. You can sit in your home and open a bank account. You can travel out the country and come back home, and at the airport don't join a line because you're Guyanese. You just swipe your card and come in. That's what we're working on. That's why now we've had a rush to get passports. Our passports are going like crazy now from people who live abroad who wanted no association. They were thinking never to come back here. I've seen tons of them come back home, and now suddenly they want to reconnect with Guyana. And we're happy for that. These are our people too, regardless of the reasons they went abroad. We're happy for them from the diaspora who are coming here, because we need more people here to unlock the opportunities. We're going to have more malls. We need more people to shop in these malls. We have higher disposable income now. We need more people to work, laborers. I can see a future when we can't find people to work. We will now be able to find people to work with the unfolding of so many opportunities. But it's better to have our own people come back and work here first before we have to bring in labor from other parts of the world. So that's why I'm so happy that they're coming back home. So many people are seeking to reconnect, get a birth certificate, get their passport, ID card, because they can see themselves in the future of Ghana. A guy met me. I went to get some food at a particular place that Apnu said I used to go to a lot. It's on the East Coast. And the guy said to me, and he said, I migrated, and I never thought in one cycle, in my lifetime, in my generation, I'll find Guyana back a safe haven. Because with what's happening around the world now, the uncertainties in Canada with the tariff war, etc., and loss of jobs, and even in the US, they are finding Guyana back a safe place. So he said, I'm coming back with my whole family. He has four persons in the family. I'm coming home. Now I can invest the same money I invest over there and make more money here in Guyana. I've checked it. I've seen. Because and we need to encourage her, because if they come home, these are our people. They create more jobs to other people. Our population here. So that when I talk about vision, I digressed a bit, because it is about contrasting political parties, looking at their list of achievements. They have none. Looking at the period they were in government, we have a recent period in the government by APNU, AFC. It was characterized by profligacy, waste. It was ineptitude. They are just dodo party. They cut out cardboards and stuff of the president. You have a president who moves around the whole country now, and a cabinet. Those, I can remember Holder, they talk about agriculture now. So Zulfikar Mustafa goes to all the agricultural areas. Every day you see him there. And some farmers give us a cussing, and we don't have a problem with that too. Because if somebody cut the main, they often, 10 people need water in their rice field, and they're planting at different times, and so they need water different times to come in from the main. So if one person cuts the dam when the others don't need water, they'll flood out the field, but he needs water here. We get blamed for that. We get blamed for every sort of thing. But it's not a problem, because if you're engaged with people, they appreciate the minister going there. So when they criticize us, you think I process that? I've gone to community meetings all my life like places like Blackbush, Poland, etc. And people, when it was harder, and people would criticize us. And then when the votes come in, we have PPP in Blackbush, Poland, 2,300 votes, APNU 3. That's how it comes in. So this is the thing. So when Zulfikar goes out, you had a holder. You Google now and find out in the 5 years that Minister Holder, who was Agriculture Minister, you probably see he went out 1.5 times. He went to a rural area. But they never even visited, because Granger said, this is private business. Farm to market roads don't matter. You know, although we want to get more food, produce more food for the country, to bring down cost of living and to export more food so that we can create more wealth for our people. But farm to market roads, D&I don't matter. No investment in those areas. So don't go. Close the sugar industry. Rice is private business. Although those are important parts of a whole economy, because they do the ethnic calculations on everything. For us, it's about our people. Whether you live in Linden or in Georgetown or in Port Morant or in Aishalton, it doesn't matter. These are our people. That's why we have grown as a political party. That's precisely why we have grown as a political party. And so, look at the difference. Contrast the behavior. Look at Trotman. We take a hammering every day for the oil and gas sector, from Kaicho News and everybody else, or some of the others. But in one press conference, we have answered more policy issues than the APNU AFC did in 5 years of their government on the oil and gas sector. You check if that's not true. In one press conference, we've addressed more issues than they did in 5 years. They signed the agreement, they hid the agreement, they took the signing bonus, the $18 million US, said they thought it was a gift, placed it outside the consolidated fund. All of that they did. And then now we have fixed we changed the PSA, we put a corporate tax, we reduced the amount that will go to retirement of the cost bank. We increased the royalty from 2% to 10% in the new PSA, and yet we get criticized for it. We updated the law from the 1986 Act to a modern act now that gives us great tools to manage the sector, but we get criticized for it. We have made transparent the NRF. Look at the IMF report. The IMF report gave us high marks in the transparency surrounding the NRF. Now they're going to court to a couple of these people to say that the money in the NRF may not be spent according to the law. I dealt with that last week. I can go down the long list of reforms that we've made. But we get criticized for that. In 5 years, you find me a press conference where the president spoke about the oil and gas sector in any detail. Remember, he took over the portfolio from Trotman. Trotman was there for about 3 years, and then Granger took over the portfolio for 2 years. You show me at a single press conference in the 5 years that Trotman addressed all of these issues, or any issue for that matter, on the oil and gas sector, or Granger did it. No, the answer is no, they did not at all. I've spoken here 100 times about, maybe 100 is like an underestimation, thousands of times about it. Vikram Bharrat has given several details about it. The president has spoken about it. And yet, you get the contrasting. They talk about transparency surrounding the oil and gas sector. So I'm asking you to contrast our agricultural policy, contrast the one on the oil and gas sector, contrast between us and the opposition, what they did in the mining sector. So the bauxite workers lost their jobs, although they supported APNU in that Aichuni-Kwakwani corridor, almost 100%. 1,000 of them lost their jobs on the APNU. The miners suffered. Last week I told you about the 5 things they did that they damaged the mining sector. Although they promised in their manifesto again to support the mining industry, and the miners voted overwhelmingly for them. They increased the tributous tax, they increased the royalty rate on a sliding scale, they add VAT to machinery and equipment, then you had to bring your equipment out to get it registered, and if you move 1 liter of fuel, you had to get permission to do so. It effectively, how could you be in the interior and you want to buy fuel from one place and move it to another place and get permission from GEA? One drum of fuel. It was just like ridiculous. They did those things and the mining sector started waning. And by the way, when you talk about gold smuggling and stuff, all the gold smuggling took place. They like to talk about, oh, it happens under the PP. You check the US reports and all the reports. Under the APNU, you had a larger quantity of gold smuggled out of the country based on the latest figures we've seen. So contrast their policy with that of the PPP. Now, what we've done, we've removed all of those restrictions. We've eliminated the tributous tax. We eliminated it. The tributous tax. We reduced the sliding scale. We removed the VAT on machinery and equipment. And we removed those 2 onerous conditions for the mining sector when we got in, because we promised. So why would a miner believe them? Why should a miner believe them? Because they made these promises before. I can go down the long list of every sector, every industry in Guyana. And that is what the elections would be about. Later this year, the elections would be about that. Who can you trust? Who can you believe to keep their promises? And so you can talk about the Amerindians, what they did. I mentioned that at the beginning. And look what has happened now. So you think if 20 persons go to a meeting, they get 20 persons in an Amerindian village, that's going to make a difference to our victory, because a lot of people run around and everybody who get 5 persons or 20 persons. Last week, Shabral asked me about that. And I said, if you have 500,000 voters, 461,000 voted the last time, say 500,000 vote now, and the PP get 60%, 300,000 votes. You still have 200,000 people who might cuss us or criticize us. We can't answer every day for a couple of people who may criticize the government, etc. Some of them hate the PP for different reasons. I see a lot of the ones in the region, and then region 2 especially, where they were either connected with illegal things, smuggling, and they got police action against them, or they were fired by the government for corruption. So I'm going to expose them later, but they'll come to, when we launch a campaign, we'll deal with a lot of that sort of thing. So today, I just wanted people to be reminded a bit that these flyers that go around, they're just like a waste of time, colossal waste of time. It is just a total waste of time. Just take the flyers, be nice to them though. Be nice to them. We expect you to be nice to people. But tell them, I don't believe anything you say. And then ask them when would Nigel use stop prioritizing Exxon above, Exxon's interests above Guyana's. So I've seen the extremism and the lies that would be told us. So as we get closer to elections, we're going to see a lot of new lies coming from the PNC. Now, for you to post a patent lie like the one that Sherwin Holder, oh, it's my Paul and Sherrod Duncan, the three. I shouldn't really be questioning this because they live lies all the time. I just thought this was a serious thing. I was just going to tackle it, and then, oh, they said Edge Hill and his entourage caused Edge Hill drove into the ferry and didn't speak to anyone and got 30 trucks stuck, etc. Edge Hill responded, it's all a lie. It's not true, but these guys would lie like a duck, you know. I don't understand. Anyhow. But when I see the three names, I shouldn't be surprised. I'm not even going to deal with that. The lies that they tell there. So we've seen the protests at the Square of the Revolution, and it is the right of any Guyanese to stage a protest. We're not going to get sucked into the debate around Miss Atwell. Now, here are things that we can say factually. We don't control ICE in the United States of America. They have a really high opinion of the People's Progressive Party to think that we can control the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Unit of the United States of America. So thank you, APNU, for thinking that we have all of these powers. Two, if they have a problem with the Trump administration's policies, they should protest to the U.S. government directly. So what they're claiming basically is that Ms. Atwell's human rights have been violated and that the PPP has gotten the Trump administration to violate her human rights. This is what they're claiming, that her human rights have been violated and the PPP got the Trump administration to violate her human rights. Of course, you know this is nonsense. I see the usual anti-PPP forces, the Raghubirs of the world, and the GHRA come out, issue statements. So if they have an anti-Trump policy, they should have the courage to say that openly, not to try to bring the PPP into their criticism of the Trump's government. I said before, whether Ms. Atwell remains in the United States of America or she's deported is within the jurisdiction of the government of the United States of America. If she stays in the United States of America, we wish her well. If she comes home, she is welcome because as a Guyanese. We don't control what she says. She could say it from the United States of America, Or she could say it, have her Facebook page in Guyana. For me, as General Secretary of the PVP, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where she is located. And what she says. I know that the people of this country would know that this is the party, in spite of all that's been said about us by extremists and people like Burke, racists, Burke, etc. It's not going to make one iota of difference. People who live here have seen us work diligently every day to change the lives of all Guyanese. This old propaganda about the PPP is not going to work like it did in the past, the dog whistle, because people are experiencing something different. So that's why, for me, I don't really care too much about where she is. And it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with us violating our human rights. When a department like ICE apprehends you and holds you, it could be for only one reason. It's for immigration-related offenses. And I thought, based on what someone said to me a couple of days ago, that Ms. Atwell was a U.S. citizen. Because I think that was posted by her that she's a U.S. citizen. Well, if she is a U.S. citizen, as she posted, and then this would be unusual. ICE holding her is unusual, but if not, then she may have further difficulties. So that's all I'm going to say, but these, like Norton and Nigel Hughes and the usual suspects showed up there. They mobilized the APNU crew. They beat the drum, and then I'm surprised they didn't do the lime and the obvious stuff. That used to be the usual. Thank God it's improved now. Mr. Norton, showing great leadership, has moved away from Obiang Jagdeo or Obiang Irfanali. You know, the usual stuff there, bring a man there. I'm like, I want to thank him for the improvement. But really, it's just, they're misguided. If they want to criticize President Trump, it's your right to do so. But as Norton said, he's going to lobby some congressmen. So that's a great thing to do. Go and lobby the congressmen to find out what's going on here. The disgusting thing about the AFC, it's worse than, I think the AFC is worse than the PNC. That's my personal opinion. They were put together like a hustlers party. It's called a hustlers party. If you look at the people who went to them, like Ramjatan and what's the rubber stamp again? Nagamutu, and then Trotman and a whole gang. They're just there. And they were more profligate, and as I said, I believe the AFC was more corrupt than APNU, which is not a compliment because it was massive when in the 5 years. But only a party like that could come up with something so vile, like to try to break the national solidarity that we've always had against Venezuela's false claim to our territory. We've had a robust bipartisan approach to this matter, where we approach it as a unified country. And in the last statement March 15 from APNU. PPPs hiding the truth about Venezuela's plans against Guyana. It's so disgusting that I don't want to read all of it. But it ends up as the PPPC as a government has proven time and time again that it has no stomach for a fight with Venezuela, and instead chooses gimmickry and falsehoods to hide the reality from the Guyanese people. This is the AFC. Now, when Mr. Norton was asked about this matter, and he was asked a sensitive question, and he said to the media, I will not tell you this even if the president mentioned it to me. And in that I saw someone who who understood that sometimes you can't conduct diplomacy in public, particularly on a sensitive matter like the border issue. It was a mature position. It was a very mature position. I saw him say that. But you can't say the same for these low lives in the AFC. They will, for anything, they will destroy the solidarity we have. Remember Cathy Hughes saying that I had promised the Venezuelans a channel into the Atlantic, when she knew that it was the PNC government that did that. She accused me of it, and I called her a lowlife, and that case is going on. So, I believe it was a lowlife comment until now, and they're all lowlives for that matter for doing the same thing again. They don't have anything that's sacred. We always saw this issue, the territorial integrity of our country, as a sacred issue. You know, I can talk about their track record in government on this very same matter, but I don't do it. But this statement came, and look how ridiculous it is from the AFC. It came a day after the G7 foreign ministers meeting mentioned this. We also agreed Venezuelan naval vessels threatening Guyana's commercial vessels is unacceptable and an infringement of Guyana's internationally recognized sovereign rights. We reaffirm respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all nations as an enduring value. First time in our history, we've had the G7 foreign ministers. These are the biggest countries in the world. In a statement, in a joint statement, mention this issue. And the AFC lowlives would come out a day after with a very divisive statement, trying to cast doubt on our approach globally. They're hustlers, I'm telling you. I've seen them before. That's why even the PNC, because they know of this issue from a principled position. They've always had our solidarity, even when elections were rigged in Guyana. And they stayed in office for nearly 30 years through rigged elections. One thing we did not break their solidarity on was the border issue. We were criticized for it when Chedi Jagan offered critical support. So we can criticize them on other things, but on the border, we're going to support. We were criticized by a number of people to say you shouldn't support them, the PNC, because their dictatorship and all of that on anything. And we kept that solidarity. But the AFC, low lives here. See what else I have to address here. So 2 weeks in a row, I addressed the issues of the Mohammeds. And I made it clear before the first week that should the Mohammeds be critical of the People's Progressive Party, I will respond. Mr. Nazar Mohammed issued a press release, and I think he spoke, in which he made a number of allegations against the People's Progressive Party. I responded to those. The following week, he spoke with Gordon Mosley, and he made some additional allegations, and I addressed those too, and I urged him to go public. I have seen in the last week one issue that was directly attributed to the Mohammeds by the Kaichor News, March 14, 2025. And it says, Nazar Mohammed told this publication, I was called by a senior minister and I was called by a permanent secretary of another senior minister, asking me to make the declaration. So the headline of the story is, government asked the Mohammeds to declare gold to boost 2024 declaration, Nazar Mohammed says. So this came after my press conference. So I'm not going to go back to those issues. I've addressed them publicly already. You know my positions on those matters that they had raised before that. So let me just address this one issue. To buy gold and hold gold and not declare it is illegal, because it means you're not paying the taxes. So for somebody to call you and tell you to declare the gold that you had bought and you didn't declare as yet is an indictment on you yourself. Because if you bought gold, which in whatever period, before the sanctions or after the sanctions, you should have declared the gold to the gold board and paid the taxes. So to have someone call you now and say, declare your gold that you're holding illegally and you have not paid the taxes, and cede and claim that this is a major transaction between the government and you, and it shows collaboration, is patently false and really ridiculous. If you bought gold and you held the gold, you have to declare the gold and pay the taxes. That's what it says in our laws. So to somehow prove that this was some collaboration with the government, citing this as evidence of collaboration, is really stretching things a bit. So that's one. I was tempted to respond to some checks that Village Voice. Now, Village Voice put out 2 checks, not the Mohammeds or anyone attributing to them. Village Voice put out a couple checks and said that, oh, this is evidence of the government doing business with the Mohammeds. So the Attorney General will deal with that matter, and I will deal with it when it is attributable to the Mohammeds. Because it's either Village Voice is fabricating stuff, or alternately, the Mohammeds are using now the PNC organ, which is like New Nation, Village Voice, as part of their PR campaign. So at the appropriate time, I'm not going to give credence to no Village Voice here, the PNC unit. If I said I will respond to the things that they come out with. On vehicles, etc., I saw they said that their lawyers have written to the GRA and given GRA 3 points to respond to, something of that nature. I'm paraphrasing here. Let me say that the Mohammeds are not the government to give GRA issues to respond to. The GRA letters were very clear to the Mohammeds, and so they have to respond to the GRA. And that's all I'm going to say this week on that matter, because I don't want the Mohammeds to dominate my press conference. You know what the government's position or positions are on these issues, and therefore I'm not going to prolong the debate. Thank you.
Dr. Jagdeo, Mikhail Rodriguez for Daybreak News. On the Mohammeds, but not exactly on them. When OFAC issued their statement, bringing to the world that they have brought sanctions against the Mohammeds in Guyana, in those statements, they specifically claimed the Mohammeds corrupting GRA officials. How confident are you that in light of the role that the Guyana Revenue Authority is accused of playing in having the Mohammeds evade taxes, how confident are you that they can go after the Mohammeds and get what is rightfully deserving in terms of taxes and due to the Guyanese people?
Yes. I have not seen anyone accusing the GRA of corruption in this matter. Now, clearly, the GRA has to give explanations on some of these issues. So, I saw, again in the public domain, put out by the Mohammeds, that this claim that these vehicles came in 4 years ago, and it's only now that the GRA is trying to conclude the transactions. Now, that is not entirely accurate. Several of these vehicles came in a couple of years ago. In fact, 3 of the vehicles, and they came in through a remigrant scheme. And those 3 vehicles alone would be about $900 million. So if you come in, they didn't come in the name of Azruddin Mohammed. If you look at the letter from the GRA, let me see if I can get a standard letter. There is a condition here of a standard letter. Let me just read to you. If a person, a remigrant, were to bring a vehicle to Guyana, any remigrant, and they qualify to bring the vehicle back, the GRA issues you with a letter. And the letter has these conditions. It's important that people are aware of it. Please note that pursuant to Section 23 and 36 of the Custom Act, Chapter 8201, remission of duties on the motor vehicle is granted on the following conditions. 1, that you maintain legal residence in Guyana in accordance with the Section 2 of the Income Tax Act, Chapter 8101, for 5 years from the date of registration of the vehicle. So that means you have to you maintain residence in Guyana for 5 years. You have to live in Guyana for 5 years. And you have to file tax returns, because if you live in Guyana for a particular you live here, you have to file income tax returns. 2, that you must reside at least 183 days for each year until the 5-year period has expired. 3, that the motor vehicle must remain in your possession and cannot be leased, transferred, or sold within the 5 years from the date of registration. 4, that the vehicle must be used by you for your primary mode of transportation, by the person who's bringing in the vehicle. And 5, that you report to the Guyana Revenue Authority in person every 6 months with the motor vehicle certificate of roadworthiness, fitness, insurance, and registration for inspection. It says, further, Section 36 of the Customs Act, Chapter 8201 stipulates that the use of this motor vehicle, contrary to the conditions specified within 5 years of importation, without payment of the full duties thereon, constitutes an offense and allows the Commissioner General to impose penalties inclusive of fines and forfeiture. So 3 of the vehicles, totaling about $900 million in taxes that were waived, went to remigrants under these conditions. It is GRA's contention now that the remigrants did not fulfill these conditions. First of all, they did not live here for the stipulated 183 days. So these vehicles only came in about 2 or 3 years ago. So that now is being monitored. So I don't see where the GRA, there's corruption there in the GRA. The GRA did not, when Mr. Mohammed or Team Mohammed started making these posts that these vehicles belong now to his fleet, it is contrary to the letter, that the duty-free letter that they got, the individuals, because it didn't come in T. Mohammed's name, it did not come in his name, it came in the name of remigrants. So now they're entitled to go after the taxes. And then the 3 other vehicles, they made it clear that the declaration was false. So, like I mentioned last week, since the Mohammeds had been at this vehicle thing for a while, that the Lamborghini was declared at $75,300 US, the cost of acquisition. Someone called me after that and said it had to be a Lamborghini with a Tata Mini engine for you to declare it at that level. But from what everyone would see in Guyana, if you go and research this yourself, you can find out the true value. But that was declared. That was the submission made to GRA. And if you look at what GRA said in their press release, 2 days, not last week, 2 days after they posted how much he paid on taxes, the GRA immediately almost came out after his post and said, here are the reasons why we can go back, because it's a voluntary compliance system that we have. So I have not seen any accusation that the GRA corruptly took money or anything like that, but you may question the length of time it took on a couple of the vehicles, which is a fair question. And maybe you should ask the GRA about that. But on this matter, there is no political harassment by taking these vehicles. You either pay taxes, the right taxes, or not. We don't have a taxation system for one group of people and another taxation system for everyone else. And somehow there's this feeling that among some people that maybe because the Mohammeds might have made a financial contribution to the PPP, which they made to every other political party. I didn't see Village Voice put out that, and that we have to somehow turn a blind eye to this, and that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Yes, go on.
Dr. Jagdeo, if I might rephrase from a layman perspective. The Mohammeds have been given 14 days to reply. It is known that if GRA finds something, if it was any other Guyanese, the vehicle would have been in GRA bond. Do you trust GRA's process?
No, GRA has to go through a proper process. This is not a cake shop agency. This is the Guyana Revenue Authority of the country of Guyana. It's not a political body. This agency has to treat taxpayers the same way. So if you had evaded taxes, then you would probably have gotten a similar letter. 14 days to prove. It's natural justice too. 14 days to prove that you have met the conditions. So GRA said, here are some findings of ours. So what if one of the remigrants can prove that they actually live here the 183 days per year in the last 2 years? Then that would mean that the information available to the GRA might be false. And then they don't have to worry about the vehicle paying the taxes because they would have met the condition. You have to give the taxpayer a period and they got 14 days to respond to the allegation. It's natural justice. You can't just go and pick up the people's vehicle the same day without giving them that right to respond.
Dr. Jagdeo, in some cases when citizens are held abroad, consulate for the country would normally find out what is going on with that citizen if there's okay. Has the Guyana consulate in America reached out to find out what is the status of Ms. Atwell?
I'm not sure about it. They may have or they may not have. From what I gather, there are quite a few Guyanese who have run afoul of ICE, not Ms. Atwell alone. That there are others, and any Guyanese citizen anywhere in the world, if they reach out to our consulates or our offices abroad for help, regardless of who they are, whether they support the opposition or not, they're entitled to be represented, or, well, as far as representation go. If we're not gonna hire lawyers for everybody, but they're entitled to equal representation, whatever that level of representation is. So, if as a Guyanese citizen, Ms. Atwell wants to reach out to the consulate, she could feel free to do so.
Dr. Jagdeo, Winless with Chariot News Network. In light of the ongoing tensions with Venezuela, what steps are being taken as a preemptive response to the landing of Venezuelan troops in Guyana territory?
Well, that is precisely the question I was addressing here. You can conduct diplomacy in the public on sensitive matters, especially the border issue. That is why the leader of the opposition was briefed. But if I were to go and say, this is our specific plan to counter Venezuelan arriving here, this is what the army is doing, it would be extremely stupid of me to do that. You recognize that. And I wouldn't want to telegraph that to the Venezuelans. So that is why those matters are being addressed. Let me assure you that those matters relating to the Venezuelan aggression against our country and their threat to our territorial integrity and sovereignty are receiving the attention of the entire government at the highest level, at the presidential level, on a daily basis. I can assure you of that. And we're working with a number of partners around the world to ensure that any Venezuelan aggression that manifests itself in a physical form would be dealt with appropriately.
Okay. Can you possibly say if the government of Guyana has solid intelligence on the possibility of a Guyanese being appointed governor in the Essequibo region?
I've seen a lot of the issue on this matter. I haven't followed it up whether it's solid intelligence or not. I've just read their reports there. But as far as we're concerned, it's the Venezuelan Essequibo that they used to mention on their side of the border. They called a place. It's not the Essequibo that we know of. Our Essequibo that resides in the 83,000 square mile of our territory, indivisible territory. We don't know of any Guyanese who've been or who's claimed to be appointed governor of Essequibo. We got a regional chairman there, we got president of the country, we got opposition leader for the whole of Guyana, including Essequibo. I don't pay too. Globally, we have to do this, but these antics by the Venezuelan government, if every day you have to treat it seriously, and that is why we took it to the ICJ. We approached the ICJ on the matter of their elections there. Our partners are fully briefed, etc. But I don't really see this no Guyanese that I know of. And Robeson-Ben already made it clear. It's a treasonous act.
So we receive
It's a treasonous act. Any Guyanese who allows himself to be appointed governor of Essequibo, that includes our territory. They could call the governor of whatever in their territory, not 83,000 square miles. They can call him governor, king, viceroy, monarch, whatever they want to call their people. But not in our Essequibo. And it's a treasonous act.
So we receive a number of reports from person about the citizens' bank location having Visa card issues and unable to access cash immediately, and have been told to wait for weeks.
What the Citizen Bank?
Yeah, at the Camp Street location. Have you received
that
any
they
report?
Took their
No.
100,000 check?
No. They can't access funds for about 3 weeks now. Persons.
Or this is the first time? So they went into the bank?
Yeah, they're having card issues and they cannot access funds immediately. Have you
So
received?
if I walk into the bank, I don't know, I've not heard of this, but if you walk into the bank, you can withdraw your money.
What we were told that they cannot access the funds immediately.
No, I don't want to know
But
if
yeah.
it has to do with
Their Visa
debit
card.
and their credit
Visa
card.
card.
Visa card, which might be a problem with their system, but it's not availability of the money, because if you walk into the bank and somebody says, we don't have enough funds now, you're trying to withdraw from your account, that's a big problem for me. Here, it would be a bank-related problem, most likely, where they have trouble with the Visa card I don't know if they do debit on both debit and credit cards, but it might be a problem with their cards. We try to find out. I'll ask the governor of the central bank to give us more details about this. But people have choices too. You know, sometimes I had to tell you the truth, the Republic Bank card, credit card, was atrocious. I went around the world, I couldn't use my Republic Bank credit card every time I tried. It's atrocious. And then I just switched. I took a credit card from another company, another bank here. So it was a horrible experience. Everywhere you go, can't use it. So people can easily switch if they.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, and as William Skytree News. Just a quick update on the 7 Project Hammerhead. On the last conversation we had, you said that there were still some documents to be submitted by Exxon.
Yes.
So I just want to know, can you say, has Exxon fully submitted all of the required documents and information?
Because I don't track like the routine things on a daily basis, but it's an easy question to ask the ministry. Have they submitted a full?
Minister, he didn't respond.
They should. What did Exxon say? They submitted everything?
The report we got from them is that they would have submitted it.
That they submitted.
But I'm just asking for a clarification from you.
I can find out before the end of the day and get back to you. I can, after the meeting, I can call them and find out whether Exxon has submitted everything for Hammerhead. To start the process, the internal process, that is the ministry's process of reviewing the documents. So we do it an internal review. We hire consultants to do the review, 2 groups of consultants, and only any approval would have to be done only after we have completed to our satisfaction the review process. But I don't know if all the documents have come in as yet to start the review process.
Just another clarification. Can you say if the discussion to look at additional fiscal benefits from this project is still on the table?
Additional fiscal
Project and others going forward.
Right now, there's no such discussion. To be truthful, there's no such discussion.
Dr. Jagdeo, good day. Cordell Jones from Livewire News. The Stockmore News has reported that U.S. Attorney Shalon Washington confirmed she was representing Melissa Melimel Atwell. However, several hours
Who
later,
said that?
Stabrook News,
Stabrook
in an article. However, several hours later in a Facebook post, the attorney denied ever speaking to the newspaper and also refuted the claim that she was representing Atwell in this matter. The newspaper has not retracted its claim or issued an apology. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Sometimes I wonder where, because here you have a clear case of a newspaper making a clear assertion that about a fact that they believe was a fact, and not talking to the person responsible. That's bad journalism. That's bad journalism. And you have a duty, if someone comes out, like the lawyer in this case came out and said, that's not true, you should publish a retraction. If was something involved with the People's Progressive Party, for months that will persist in the Stabrook News and the other agencies. But I guess what this says to a number of Guyanese is that don't believe everything you read in a newspaper, because in this case, it was a fabrication by the Stabrook News, a fabrication that got exposed minutes later. And once it's black and white, it's in print, people think you should believe everything that's there. So it could happen from a mainstream paper, and sometimes in there, I've seen not all the reporters, but some who were hostile to the PPP, they would turn twist every story to make, to create an anti-PPP angle. It happens all the time.
My second question, is there any connection between the People's Progressive Party and the Facebook page, Guyana Daily News, or Live in Guyana's Facebook page as suggested by the opposition? Are these social media platforms operated by the party and funded by the government?
I've seen a number of people try to, in the public domain, say that the People's Progressive Party is directing what happens on Daily News, on Live in Guyana, and on several other sites. The thing is that it's not a new accusation. It's always been there that anything that anyone speaks in this country that is favorable to the People's Progressive Party or critical of the opposition has to be PPP aligned. Now, Daily News has from time to time posted that they support the People's Progressive Party. I see it on their page. And I thank them for it. People are free to support the People's Progressive Party. We're not gonna run people down for wanting to support the People's Progressive Party. There are hundreds of thousands of people who support the People's Progressive Party. But does that mean that we sanction or support everything that's posted on Daily News? The answer is a big no. There are many times I agree with things that are posted here, and lots of times that I disagree with things that are posted there. That's their editorial policy. This is an independent organization. This is not, we don't sit in the PPP and every day say to Daily News or any other website, this is what you have to post about anyone. They have minds of their own, they have their editorial policy. They address these matters. So the answer is no. And as I said before, there are many angles that sometimes Daily News would post that I don't subscribe to. And but this is either to bring the PPP down or to maybe affect the credibility of Daily News as an independent organization. That's what they say. They're an independent organization, like anyone else. So can we tell, the Mohammed said, critic is our surrogate. Critic is right here. You think I agree with everything that he does? There are times I support strongly his line of reasoning, and there are times when I would disagree with the content of what he puts. But he has a right as an independent organization to say what he wants. Or if he libels people, he has to go and face the court. So we don't tell critic every day when he goes on his program, this is what you have to say, here is a script, this is what you must write, etc. It is to bring down the credibility of independent voices that they make that position. But there are lots of times critics would say things that I don't agree with. And the manner especially, or the language he uses to say things, I would never use that. I'm a general secretary of a serious party. And he is critic, he could say whatever he wants. You know, I don't know, I have a party relying on what I say, and tens of thousands of people relying on our party. I have to be responsible. So he can do whatever he wants, but it's a free country. Now, does that mean that Nigel Hughes, when they go on Rickford work program, or Sherrod Duncan, agree with all the vile racist things that Sherrod Duncan and the others? Do they tell Sherrod Duncan or Rickford Burke to post these vile racist things every day? Or some of the others like Bench Cup or Queen. So nobody accuses them of that. So my point is that these are independent news organizations. We agree with some of the things they say. We don't agree with others. That's normal. That's normal.
Trina Williams, Ghana Chronicle. I want to come back to what you spoke about earlier regarding the protests at the Square of the Revolution. We saw the opposition leveraging protests concerning the detention of someone towards their political narrative. Do you think that the opposition using this platform solidifies your stance that they need to seize every opportunity to stay relevant? Because the crowd at the Square of the Revolution was bigger than what they have at their outreaches or even in front of GCOM.
Yeah, and by the way, I see some big estimates of the crowd and all 700. There was no 700 persons, yeah. So the thing is that when I look at the people too, it's the people from the same group you will see in front of GCOM. So they had a minor bump. And as I said before, listen, people have a right to, in this country, to protest peacefully. We can talk about the protests and the abuse of the protests and using this girl's woes to advance their political agenda. Because she has difficulties now, but they are going to use her to advance their political agenda. I don't believe they genuinely care anything about her. They just want an occasion to criticize the government, as you saw. They ended up cussing me and Irfan Ali almost the whole speech. It had not very little to do with Ms. Atwell. So I don't think they even genuinely care about that. But they have a hard time, as you said, getting people to come. So they got a little bit excited when they saw 300 people or so. But really, I look at the Nigel Hughes and the others, and it's damp. And I look at how people's body language a lot. And they're not ready for the challenges of the future, of running this country. Running a country like this is pretty complex, especially at the stage we're at. You know, you have to address 100 moving parts at the same time. And they've demonstrated a form of laziness and ineptitude in government and even in their private matters that tell me that they don't have the energy to do it. You have to be excited about going to work. You have to be working on 10 things at the same time because you can't address a single issue. And I look at, they're just not ready for it. A once a week engagement that they do on Friday at the press conference, and then it's mediocre. You know, they don't do any proper research, etc. And the cushy job, you know, maybe a little drink at the Bamba Mali or somewhere else, Like it's not about, they're not ready. And that was what came out. When I watched these things, the images that came, I look at the images and I said, oh, not ready. They're not ready. So you're right. They have to use every opportunity. If you have, like outside of Freedom House here, you have someone start knocking a tin cup, they'd show up here to criticize the VP. This is a tin cup party now. Anything you be there would be there.
Village Voice posted a promotion with the big betrayal sign over James Bond's face.
What?
Village Voice posted a promotion with a big betrayal sign in front of James Bond's face, who recently explained that...
What sign?
Betrayal.
Betrayal. Oh, okay.
Over James Bond's face, who recently explained that the Atwell issue is related to the U.S. immigration policy and not the PPP government. Do you believe that this is part of a broader effort by the opposition to silence persons who share an independent view?
Yeah, but it's the old way of operating. And it wasn't like a rant by James Bond. He made a post, and it's logical. Anybody who reads it would see it's logical. But you could give credence to Norton's rant and Nigel Lewis talking about all sorts of nonsense, but see a reasoned position and call it betrayal. Because it's the same thing about ownership. We own you. If you don't toe the line, then you either betray us, you're something else, house slave, soup drinker, whatever else. The usual nonsense, everything. So it's with that philosophy. They can't get out of it that people are smart enough to use their own brains to figure things out themselves and to plan their future. And no political leader of any party should tell people how to think. They believe they can tell Afro-Guyanese how to think, and that's not going to fly. That's not going to fly because you have a lot of smart people and people who can think for themselves.
Okay, and finally from me, we saw recently David Hines, WPA co-leader, said that the only purpose Ramjitan and Nagamutu ever served was to bring in Indian votes. What are your thoughts about this? And do you see the PNC/APNU using this same strategy at the upcoming elections?
They can use whatever strategy they want. It's not going to make a difference. They can bring in anyone. They can put whoever they want to run on the slate. It doesn't change the nature of what they represent. And that is what matters when voters have to make a decision. Because, as you're right, they can put anybody there, any face. It doesn't matter. It's the... Look, if you really want to talk frankly, today, today, in the court, Nigel Hughes is trying to prove that Mingo... So he said he caught our witness. She didn't hear Mingo make a declaration. You know, the person who's giving evidence in the court. So he made that a big issue. She didn't hear it personally, but did it happen? The whole country saw it. We have videos of him doing it. The Chief Justice had to say to him, "You're not doing it properly. Go back and do it." He then did not do it properly. Again, made that second false declaration. He said, "You have to post there, SOPs there." They moved it to the GCOM yard, put people far away, and then truncated the exercise. What is he trying to prove? How can you believe these guys on anything they say? Today in court, he's trying to say, "Oh, Mingo nobody heard Mingo. The witness didn't hear Mingo make the false declaration." Although that's available, it happened, but she didn't hear him make the declaration. So what? does that change the fact that he made a false declaration? We had an independent COI into the elections, and they found that Mingo, Lowenfield, Roxanne Myers were linked with a plot with APNU to steal the elections. We brought in independent people from abroad. They had the COI. People forget the COI. The report is there. And how can you, that's what I'm talking about, how could you believe anything they say? So this is an ongoing. They haven't even changed. So my point is they can put any face, but they haven't changed their nature. They still believe that they won the would continue to propagate the lie that they won the 2020 elections. Two, they're gone on this adventure about biometrics and bloated lists again, on this adventure about that. They have not changed one bit. They're not regretful. We thought Nigel Hughes wanted to make a clean break with the past, would come and apologize for the role they played. You saw the obfuscation. You saw him diverting attention from the issues. He promised a review. Where is the review? Today he's trying to prove otherwise. If you can't accept that, what was in black and white, what's on video and not AI generated, actual video, how could anything you put to the electorate, how could people believe that? You would lie your way into office. You would lie about your promises. And that's not going to happen. So they can put Aram Jatan or they can resurrect Nagamutu back and put him there. It does not matter. It is, people have seen them in the 5 years. You know, they talk a good game in 2015. PPP corrupt, young people excluded, PPP inept, we had plans for everything. We are the party that will change the country. People bought it, young people were inspired. Yeah, it's time for change, time for change. So they did a good job. And then what happened? They got it, and people saw them in action. They saw them. I'm not talking about PPP supporters. I'm telling you about hardcore PNC supporters saw them, believed the nonsense they were telling them all the time, young people, and then you think those people are going to put at risk their families again? Because with them, we'd go around in circle, we might get a little bit of money for a couple of years, and then it goes back to zero. That's been their track record. Goes back to zero. Don't have sustained progress. Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo.
Yes,
my name is Niran Cyrus.
Yes.
So Guyanese have been invited to Babujan this weekend to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Jagan, where you and President Ali are scheduled to be speakers there. Could you shed some light on what we could expect?
Well, I hope people will come there. I don't want to talk too much about what we intend to speak of at Babujan, but one thing you're not going to get from us is divisive politics. You're going to find a party that will mount that stage there in the form of different people, including the president, that would be entirely positive about our future, that will reinforce what we want to do for Guyana in the next 5 years. We'll speak of the challenges we face from different quarters too, because we are a party that tends to be realistic about those challenges, and a party that wants to build a unified country where people of every race, every religion, every gender, they feel comfortable, they feel that they have a government working for them. And that is what they're going to find. So that is what, in a nutshell, you can expect. It's more of the same. We don't look every day to look smart and come up with some brilliant ideas. We're going to the moon one week just to get attention. We've stuck with the core messages: jobs, housing, security, health, education, leisure. These are important. Recreation, national unity. These are our basic themes. And if you look at it, family, etc., that's what we're working towards. We don't try to reinvent every week what we're working on. That's why we've been consistent. And when you talk to people, these are the things that matter most to them. Every person. And so that's what you can expect from us.
Yeah, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Given that Michael Richmond, Live Wire News. Given that the president of the Guyana Press Association has been selectively representing certain reporters, and considering our presence at the protests despite not being attached to any media house, how do you view our role in balancing advocacy while our position as a representative of the press? Does this raise concern about our impartiality in our actions?
I think any right-thinking person in Guyana, in government, in opposition, in the media, would know that Nazima Raghubir is a PPP hater and has consistently been one throughout. There is no question about her objectivity. She lacks objectivity. She will steer every issue to make it seem as though the government is at fault or attacking press freedom conveniently. We've seen how they've manipulated the leadership of the Press Association to keep control there. And then the damage you don't see. They collect a lot of money from abroad in spite of not being attached to various organizations. So the association gets a lot of benefits. But that's one thing. They also share a lot of false information abroad. So when you see some press freedom indices being developed around the world, they would think, oh, this is like a press association that's truly independent in a country. So they would tend to take what they send up, that's international bodies, and give credence to those, to what they send up. If you only had a glimpse of what they've been sending up, you will then see how vile and anti-PPP it is. We had a taste of this when Transparency International released the 2019 statement that went from TIGI of Guyana to them. That's for the first time we saw the lies that TIGI told them, that under APNU, they had improved the Integrity Commission when they actually, for 3 years, we didn't have any declaration. 2, that they had stopped the protests, they had stopped the parking meter scandal, when it's not true. You know, it's civil society, they approved it. And the third thing was, they've been releasing and publishing all of the oil and gas contracts. When we know that they hid the contract for nearly 2 years and took the signing bonus and hid it too, in an account that was not in the consolidated fund. But the TIGI Guyana chapter that was made up of anti-PPP people put all of those in a report, positive report, and send it to Transparency International in 2019. I wonder if they would release the report they're sending up now. Trust me, it would all be against the PPP. These are PP haters who end up going into these bodies, the Gulsarans of this world. They end up going there. And that's how they work internationally. So I wouldn't be shocked to see the reports that go up from the Press Association here about transgression. You know, here this is one of the freest countries in terms of press freedom. Every day, look at Kaicho News and the criticism. Every day, vile